Hey TFHOC fam, welcome back to another episode of Live from the Living Room. Today we have the honor to have Pastor B with us one more time.
I'm excited. We get to close out the series.
I know.
If you've been part of the series, we just want to say job well done.
How many weeks was it?
This was 7 weeks. The number of completion.
Yes. Do you feel completed?
You know what I do? We were going to add another message, but I just feel like, no, I feel like this was the bow on the end. So I'm excited.
And I remember you straddling between adding another week.
Yes,
and, when I was sitting in today, I was like, this was the way to end.
Good.
Because it almost feels like this is the hardest part when you actually have to do something about it.
Girl, don't get me started. Yep.
And, during the message, before I go into it, can you give us a 1-minute recap of your heart behind why you even picked the story of Lot?
If you've been part of this series, you know that we have been in Genesis chapter 2 and 3. So the Garden of Eden. But then, I wanted to end in Genesis chapter 13 and a little bit into 14 because it shows this beautiful, painful picture of what happens when we don't end well. And so, years ago, I read a book by Dr. Henry Cloud called Necessary Endings and it never left me. Now, he doesn't allude to Lot. He alludes to some different things. But as I was taking a look at the story of Lot and Abram, it was this beautiful, painful picture of what happens when we don't end well, and we need to end when we should end.
One of my favorite parts is when you talked about the meaning of names.
Yeah.
And you talked about Abram. Can you tell us what Abram means?
Yeah. So the name Abram means esteemed father. The irony is that Abram was childless. And in that time, names are prophetic foretelling of your destiny or circumstance surrounding your birth. So the fact that his name is esteemed father, like number one daddy, and like he had no kids, he would have probably been a mockery during that time. Then his name changes from Abram, esteemed father, singular, to father of many or father of multitudes, Abraham. Why would God do that? Because God was reminding him of the promise that he made. And God who makes a promise, he is faithful to keep it. And that's what we see.
And you really talked about the process in between him becoming Abram to Abraham and what God really did in the middle.
Yeah.
And there's something that you alluded to during your message where you talked about pruning. And as I sat there, I said, at times we say this as Christians without actually knowing what it means. And prior to this episode, guys, I asked Pastor B, what's one thing that she walked away with? And she said that the process is painful.
Yeah.
And when I think about pruning, it's painful. But can you walk us through what pruning is?
Yeah. So I want to give credit where credit due. Dr. Henry Cloud talks about pruning specifically when it comes to necessary endings. And pruning is an agricultural term. Pruning cuts away from growth that will cause a plant to be stunted in growth. So pruning hurts, but pruning will never produce the fruit in our life that we need to produce unless it's cut away. So sometimes it's maybe a bad thought pattern that needs to be pruned, cut away. Maybe it's a bad habit that needs to be pruned, cut away. Maybe it's a bad relationship, whether that's a friendship or whether that's a dating relationship, whether that's a work relationship. Prune so that you can experience growth. That sounds really good. And this entire series, the last 7 weeks, about building boundaries for our life, because boundaries aren't burdens, boundaries are benefits. However, today is when we talked about the implementation of it. And implementing boundaries is hard. And it's hard because it hurts. And it feels like cutting away. It feels like the pruning. But for us to bear fruit, for Abram to become Abraham, he needed to deal with Lot. And how we deal with our Lot will determine whether we stay Abram or become Abraham.
And when I was thinking about pruning and how Abram was going to step into being Abraham, I really started to see what I said, God, pruning is actually a reward for growth. And a reward when we're growing, God has to cut some things away. And you actually said that, what was it? That subtraction, it will actually be addition.
We want addition. We want
addition.
To live lives of addition. And in our culture, for us to have an experience addition in our life, then it feels like we need to amass money and amass friends and amass influence and all this other stuff. And that's the world's culture. But kingdom culture is we want addition, but sometimes addition comes through subtraction. Mm-hmm. And we live in a multiplication world where we want it now, we want it supersized and it's extra, extra, extra. But sometimes what the Lord wants to do is instead of multiplication or even addition, growth will come with subtraction. And you had said, pruning is a reward for growth. I think it's more of a precursor to growth. And the reason why I say that is because growth will happen organically. And even if a tree isn't pruned, it will continue to grow. It won't produce fruit.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that pruning is actually a precursor to producing fruit. So we're going to grow. Whether we're going to grow in the world's way, we're going to grow in kingdom way, we're going to grow. I'm not less concerned about growth, and I'm more concerned about fruit. Who cares if you have this huge, massive tree that's not producing fruit? If it's a fruit-bearing tree and it's not producing fruit, guess what? It doesn't matter the size. What's happening is we're seeing a lot of people really grow and get big. I got a lot of influence. I got a lot of money. Where's the fruit? Where's the fruit of your life? We take a look at even just our community. There's a lot of churches in Orange County that have thousands and thousands of people, and that's amazing. I'm not looking at how many people are coming to church. I'm talking about where's the fruit of our church. I don't care how big we get. If we're not producing fruit, we're not doing what God has called us to do.
Yeah. And, right now that we're talking about subtraction, I put my ear to the ground again and I was like, what do we really need to hear after this message? And in our culture, we hear, just cut them off, cut them off, cut them off. And I really walked away with, well, Pastor B, is cutting people off biblical? If we're told, be patient, be forgiving, long suffering,
Yeah. So the two handles that I wanted to give people as we walked away was to do an assessment of our relationships. What people are not going to hear me say is cut people off. Like, I'm going to cut you like bag bangs. Like, this is not a reality TV show. This is not Real Housewives of Orange County. We're going to have loving, kind conversations. We're going to give people grace. We're going to give people time. We're going to give people kindness. We're going to give people all of these things. Now, I used an economic example. If I were to invest in Dow Jones or NASDAQ and I'm just willy-nilly putting money in and I'm not getting any return on that stock investment, that's bad stewardship. So I'm not saying that you should cut people off and not care about them. I'm saying we have limited resources in our life, limited time, energy, finance, relationship. We're limited in that. We would love to be gracious and kind and be bountiful and beneficial to everyone, but we can't be all things to all people. Like, everyone's going to have a need. So what we have to do is take inventory. The two handles that I give people, what does it look like to address entitlement? What does it look like to set expectations? And the second thing is assess investment. And if the answer to both of those questions is that instead of helping, I've been hurting, and that's created entitlement. And the second question is, if my investments, what I'm pouring into people, is used to get me and there's resentment, then it's probably a good time to set a boundary. I'm not saying cut people off. I'm saying set a boundary. If the boundary is repeatedly broken, then it's time and a hint that the relationship might be broken as well.
I love when you said in the message that when Abram, I need to say Abram before I say Abraham.
Me and you. Well, I did it too, yes.
But Abram actually had to send an army to save Lot because he went to Sodom. And you talked about how he was using his resources and he stopped stewarding where he was.
Yeah.
Would you say, Pastor B, that when you're starting to, I wouldn't say out-resource, but you're losing yourself in the process, that's a pretty good indicator that you're enabling someone and not actually, I wouldn't say enhancing, you said another word.
So let's use an agricultural term. When understanding, like, stewarding our resources and doing what God's called us to do, there is this principle of sowing and reaping. Well, in order for sow and reap, when there's a plow that's pulled, you need two hands on the plow. If you're going to till the ground, you need two hands on the plow. If I let go of the plow, then the plow is going to go wherever the animal goes. I need to have two hands on the plow. The same is true with our calling. We need to have both hands on our calling. So if one hand is on the plow, my calling, and the other hand is trying to pick up people that don't want to go to the places that I'm trying to go, guess what? I've taken my hand off the plow and my direction could be misaligned. So again, it sounds like savagery. It's not savagery. It's wisdom. Where am I investing my time? Where am I investing my resources? Where am I investing my energy? And is there a return on investment? A spiritual return on investment. It doesn't mean that we stop loving people. It doesn't mean that we stop caring. It means that we set a good, healthy boundary.
And you actually live that out really well, Pastor B, in your own life. Because you always tell us, if you want to run with me, then run with me.
Oh, Amy's telling on me. Family, Amy's getting all the goods. Okay. Let's have that conversation.
But I actually love that you say that because, so me and Pastor B are getting to know each other really well. But when you said that, it really put things into perspective.
Yeah.
Because at times, and I've said this so many times in the past, I can't be dragging someone along and making them see what I'm seeing. When God's given you a vision, I've also learned in the process that God will also give you people around you that will see the vision that you have and call you up.
Yes.
So she says two things that I love. She says, if you want to run with me.
I'm like sweating. What did I say? Oh,
run with me, right?
Okay.
If you want to run with me, run. And you also say, I'm not here to call you out. I'm here to call you up.
That's right. Okay, good. Okay.
And the reason I love that one is because you also give us space to grow. So when I came to meet you, it wasn't like you had all these expectations automatically.
Nope.
It's like you let me grow into
We're
them.
literally going to tell on ourselves right now. Amy, when you came to church and you're like, Pastor B, I want to serve. What did I tell you?
She told me to come to church for 1 month.
And then I think I said 6 weeks.
You said,
Was it 1 month?
it was 1 month, and then
Okay.
I told you, and then my best friend said you need to extend that to a year because you need to actually love the house before you
Shout
step
out to
into
Tiff.
it.
That's right.
Yeah, and the reason she said that is because one, I can't pour into something that I don't love, right?
Somebody needs to write that down. See, you're serving at churches and you don't love it, or you don't want to be involved and you're tiptoeing around it. No. Yes, 100%. Carry on.
And so after she told me that, we kept on having a back and forth because there's so much I want to do, but if the love isn't there and the vision is not there,
Yeah.
you knew that it would be harming me and not helping me.
Absolutely.
And so I just want to commend you on that because what you preached is what you do.
Thank you.
And so as I was hearing you, I was like, she's Abraham. I don't want to be Lot. Like, I'm not going to pitch my tenants in Sodom.
But you know what? When you say that I'm Abraham, I think Abraham to a fault, because he did enable. And I think for a long time in ministry, I felt like loving people was doing everything for them.
Yeah.
And my whole thing was, I always said, I want to be for somebody what I wish I had. And so I would just pour into the next generation, pour into the next generation, pour into the next generation. And it came back to bite me in the butt. And so now in this season of my life, I'm entering in a new decade this year, and I just want to operate with wisdom. And so instead of throwing, instead of sowing seeds everywhere, sowing seeds is an agricultural term, instead of just throwing seeds and expecting things to grow, I'm going to be very intentional. When Amy first came to TFH, this was, 3 years ago, she said, hey, do you do mentoring? And what came out of my mouth was not scripted or intentional, but it now is my language. I said, God has allowed me to steward this field. And if people are here in this house, I want to develop them. And she wasn't part of TFH at the time.
No.
Over the pandemic, and then well over a year and a half later, she came faithfully. And I said, don't get involved, don't serve. I want you to get healthy. And if you're going to run, because Amy's like, I want to serve. I said, oh, do you? Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Because we run very
Yeah.
fast in this house. And I know that we're not a house for everyone. I'm totally fine with that. If you have an appetite for mediocrity, we ain't going to serve that here. If you have an appetite for boring, basic, and bland, you eat bananas and wear beige, we're not for you. But if you want to flip the kingdom upside down, it's going to cost you something. If you're going to run with me, you got to run with me. And I'm going to keep it real, and I don't want to hurt you. I want to help you. And if I tell you something, I'm telling you in love, because I don't want to call you out. I don't want to say shame, shame, shame on you. I want to call you up. There's more in you, baby. There's more in you. There's more that God has for you. That's the place
Yeah.
that we want to take people to.
And never one step of the way.
I'm getting scared
No.
saying that. I'm like sweating because
No.
I know someone's going to be like, God, that sounds crazy, or she's so intense, or wow. But you want to know something? Time, I have a lump in my throat. Amy, time is too short. People are going to hell, and we have to have a message that is so compelling that we're telling people Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus can transform your life. Jesus, 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 Jesus. And I see so many people just sitting by waiting for the rapture to happen. Get off of your butt and start doing things that matter for the kingdom. Your life matters. You have more impact than you know. So why sit here and waste our life when we literally could turn the world right side up and usher in the presence of God that will bring revelation to people that are broken and dying and hurting and want to quit. And that's over here. That's what we do.
I have something in my heart that I want to say, and if it's not biblical, you can cut this off. But I feel like as you were saying that right now, the church can become like Lot. That we decide to put our tent in Sodom because we don't want to go forward into everything else. And as you're talking from a pastor's perspective of what you see, I want to say this, guys, because you never once told me the solution in this whole process. You always let me come to you with what God was speaking and what God was showing. And you came alongside of that and you said, okay, let's do it. And so the reason I'm saying this is because I feel that the way that you run the church is how you run your life. And the way that you bring people into your life is seeing how we function on our own.
Ooh.
And as you have people around your lives, guys, like, this is all about who can run with you, who can add into your life, and also how you can add into their lives, because this
Yeah.
isn't just one-sided.
Yeah.
This is also how you can add into their life. So even as, you were talking about examine, I also sat there like examining myself. Like, am I being that good friend? Am I seeing the thing in the other person? And I want to go back to when I first met you. And maybe this is like a how we met story, but that's okay. But guys, when I met Pastor B, I had overheard a conversation, and how a man actually came up to you and said that what you were doing was wrong.
Oh my God, why am I crying? I remember that night.
And
I remember that night.
I remember you grabbed his hand like this, you grabbed his arm, and you recommended churches nearby that had similar beliefs as him. And that's the moment that I wanted to ask her to mentor me. Because it wasn't seeing the platform, it was seeing a woman that was running the race, a similar race as me. And instead of being bitter or angry over somebody not seeing their calling over their life, they instead said, I'm going to continue to build the church by pointing you somewhere else, because you're still pointing them to Jesus. And the whole point of our lives, guys, is to point people to Jesus. And this house points people to Jesus. You point people to Jesus. And this whole boundary series, you talked about it not being barriers, it not being burdens, but it being boundaries. And these boundaries point people to Jesus. It's not savagery, like you said. It's actually a helping hand and being wise in all that we do. So Pastor B, I am so happy that you ended up coming on to this episode. She wasn't supposed to be on today, by the way.
I wasn't.
And
no.
I just want to tell you that
you.
as you spoke the message, I said to myself, Pastor B is Abraham. And there's a lot of people that stayed in Sodom, and that's okay. But there's people that are going to run in with you into Canaan in order to see what God's going to do next.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. I feel like this was way too emo. Sorry for all the non-emotional people out there. This series has been a gift to me. Thank you. I hope that if this series has ministered to you, you share it with people. Share and tag your friends. If you're ever in the Orange County area and you want to step into more of the community.
The race.
Yes, the race. You have a space here. We also have an online community that's forming, and this forming community is going to be led by Amy. And so we love you guys. We're sending blessings upon you. God bless you. And we can't wait to start something new next week.
We'll see you again next week for a new, well, not new series, but a good work. We'll see you guys then. Bye, guys.